Welcome to Dodgers Dogs. As part of the Dodgers Daily Network, Casey Porter here, joined by Austin Brubaker. It is Friday night in the big town, and we are going to talk a lot of Dodgers baseball. And man, Austin, do we have a lot to talk about. I know we've talked a little bit since the trade deadline. Tommy Edman, him and both Kevin Kiermaier are both in the lineup tonight. You saw Michael Kopech have a really nice outing the other night, nice one inning, I should say. So already fruits the labor of the trade deadline that you're seeing in the lineup.
Yeah, it's going to be a exciting night. It's going to be, obviously, Dodgers baseball. What else could you ask for going on tonight against the Oakland Athletics? One of the last times you're going to be able to call them the Oakland Athletics. I believe it is just Kevin Kiermaier that is in the lineup. I think we're going to still be waiting for Tommy Edman to come back. I think he's still working on his progression for coming back, but still some of the fruits of the labor for the Dodgers coming back into this lineup from the trade deadline. You'll be coming up seeing Jack Flaherty get his debut in Dodgers blue. It's going to be a fun night. Dodgers baseball. What more could you ask for this team?
No doubt about it, and it was certainly an exciting night last night down on the farm. You had the 8-inning no-hitter from Jackson Ferris, and then you also had the walk-off from Dalton Rushing. You had 3 hits from Jose Ramos. You had a huge night from Wilman Diaz. So it was a lot of fun down on the farm last night too, wasn't it?
Oh, it's a lot of fun down on the farm. I can hear the Dodgers dogs barking in the background, ready for some Dodger baseball tonight. I literally, right off the screen, I'm also watching the Great Lakes game right now. Actually, Maddox Bruns is making his return to the mound tonight. We'll get into some of the stuff down on the farm. Jackson Ferris getting the promotion from Great Lakes to Tulsa. Super excited about that. We'll dive into that a little bit later. But also, we want to interact with you guys, talk with you guys, a little bit more of a breakdown of what happened from the trade deadline, as well as a debrief. I know it was a frustrating series to watch them against San Diego. Dodgers have a chance to turn the page and keep this thing going as we enter into the last 2 months of the regular season.
And you're absolutely correct. I guess I read that wrong while I was at the restaurant eating with my beautiful bride of 25 years, of which I'd like to say on the air, happy anniversary to her. We went out and had a really nice anniversary date last night. Yesterday was our 25th anniversary, Austin. So
congratulations,
unbelievable
man.
That I found somebody that was willing to put up with me for 25 years. So I wanted to say congratulations to my beautiful bride on the air. How about that?
How about that? Congratulations to you, Casey. That's pretty amazing.
That is. Okay, we have a wonderful crowd logging in, Austin. Gregory, good evening to you. Roy Estrada, thank you so much for joining. Good evening. Roy, it's going to be a fun night of Dodgers talk and Dodgers baseball. Christopher Navarro, hey, Casey, question. What do you think about having Bobby Miller work out of the pen in Oklahoma City? Maybe that's his way back to L.A. I for one, of course, I get to see it so much at the minor league level. So do you, Austin. Mm-hmm. The Dodgers play these guys all over the place, and it wears me out because it's just all this analytical crap about okay, well, if we can make a guy play 7 different positions, then that makes him versatile enough to where we can have this guy there and that guy here. But then the next thing you know, you've done what you did to Miguel Vargas, and the guy's head swimming, and you have no idea. I mean, it's like he doesn't know where he's going to play when he shows up at the ballpark that night. And I have talked to players from the high school level, obviously, many of them, to many great players at the college level, like elite college players, to plenty of these professionals, and they hate it. Most of them do. They hate that one thing that baseball players like is they like consistency and they like routine. So where they're at in the batting order, they like to know where they hit. They like to know what is expected of them. They like to know where they're going to be in the lineup that day. So this versatility thing that the Dodgers are valuing so much, it wears me out. I'm just not a believer in it. I don't feel like it's helped them in any way, shape, or form advance their causes towards winning a World Series. I think you put the best 9 players on the field, they perform. The best 9 players perform, and the 9 duties they are given, that's the team that wins playoff baseball games. So whenever you're talking about building depth as a pitcher, to me, it's not as simple as taking a guy who started his whole life. He's used to a minute by minute by minute routine, of which I've seen many times of Bobby Miller. So have you, Austin. And then saying, okay, you know what? We're just going to ditch that entire routine and we're just going to throw you out in the bullpen, of which there is zero routine, and we're going to do it in the most high leverage of moments. It might work, but I'm not a fan of it.
Yeah, so we'll get into some of the versatility talk, because I think Casey and I still have to dive into some of the trades that the Dodgers have made, do a little bit of back and forth as far as some of the trade goes there. As far as Bobby Miller is concerned, look, it has been a struggle this season since he has come back from the injury. And so I think with fans, I think they're looking for some creative ways to utilize the explosiveness of Bobby Miller stuff, which his stuff is electric. His stuff is explosive. I think what Casey had mentioned, where it is a pretty drastic change of scenery when you go from being a starter where you have a very set routine, when you go and you know the expectations of when you're going to be coming in, what is expected of you, to transitioning to the bullpen, especially when you are already struggling, especially when you're still trying to figure out your stuff, figure out your command. That is a big deal. That is a big issue. And I think the way that you would have to go about transitioning Bobby Miller to the bullpen is kind of similar to what the Dodgers had done last season with a Ronan Kopp at the minor league level, where they decided to transition him basically full-time to be in the bullpen. Ronan Kopp, left-handed pitcher, part of this Dodgers organization, electric stuff. They decided to transition him to a relief pitcher and really keep him at that full-time. With the Bobby Miller, I think the Dodgers still like the upside of him being a starting pitcher, because if you have a guy that can provide bulk amount of innings, can provide a lot of innings out of the starting pitcher, I think you get an insane amount of value. I think similar to some of the struggles that a guy like a Gavin Stone had as the starting pitcher last year. They didn't transition him immediately to the bullpen. They waited things out. They allowed him to work things out, and he was able to figure things out. With Bobby Miller, I'm not saying that it's going to be the exact same trajectory, nor am I saying that he's going to 100% be able to figure things out. But right now, in the best interest of the Dodgers, I think they want to keep him long-term to see if they can reinvigorate what was there with Bobby Miller. What made him so good was that he could throw that as a starting pitcher. He can provide those electric moments. He could do that out of the bullpen, yet it would be a longer transition. I don't think it'd be as easy of a transition as Dodgers fans think. And also right now you have a lot of guys, potentially some guys that are coming back into this bullpen coming up in a little bit. I don't think it's an absolute necessity. Granted, the bullpen is pretty taxed right now, but the only thing that I could possibly see would be if it was a planned piggyback type start with a Bobby Miller. That's the only thing that I could see him out of the bullpen, not as a ninth inning closer immediately, unless you wanted to immediately make that transition, in which case I don't believe the Dodgers are fully there yet.
Yeah, like piggyback starter's a little bit different. So if you wanted to say, hey, maybe he could be a piggyback guy, at that point you have two starters. So you're going to go, okay, well, we're going to throw this first guy 3 innings. We're going to throw this next guy 4 innings. One might go 4, one might go 3, but out of these two guys, we need 7 innings. So what that does for a starter is that they can then say, okay, well, I have this amount of time left. I need to start doing. So they actually still do have the routine. That's the advantage of a piggyback versus just throwing the guy in the routine. So I would say the maximum amount of change that you could give Bobby Miller to predict any kind of success. Now, like I said, he's good enough. He could go out there and mow through guys if he's on, no matter what role you put him in. But I think the piggyback role would be a better situation to do it in, for the simple fact that he's going to be able to know, I'm coming in the 4th inning. Therefore, in the 2nd inning, I'm going to start doing my plyo work. I'm going to start doing my heavy ball work. And then in the 4th inning, I'm going to do my band work. And then the 5th inning, I'm going to start running around and doing, my flat work. And then 20 minutes before I go out, which would be maybe the bottom half, maybe 1 inning away, that's when you start throwing your bullpen. That gives him the same type of routine that he's always had as a starter, but yet also bringing him in relief in a piggyback setting. Now, I could definitely see something like that. They've done that a lot with Kyle Hurt, a young man who is a starter but needs to be versatile. And let me kind of amend what I said earlier about the moving parts around. When you're on the margins, like a guy like Andre Lipsius, somebody like that, Hunter Fiducia, if you're somebody like that, then you need to be begging the organization to play you in 9 different positions, because the more positions you play, the more marketable you are to a major league team. Like Hunter Fiducia, one of the biggest problems he has is literally the only place he plays is catcher.
Yes.
If he played right field and third base and first base, he would have been on the roster all year long. So for those guys that are on the margins, being versatile like Andre Lipsius, Hunter Fiducia, like a Chris Owings could have been, like an Alan Trejo. Alan Trejo needs to be able to play left field. He needs to be able to play center field. He needs to be able to play third base, shortstop, second base. That's the only way he's going to make it because he's on the margins. But for the guys that aren't on the margins, like Bobby Miller, like Max Muncy, like Mookie Betts, like Freddie Freeman, like Shohei Ohtani, those guys need everyday consistency wherever they're at. And then you can take your 2 or 3 marginal guys and do whatever you want with them. But to me, Bobby Miller is not on the margins. He is one of those guys. He's in that category of guys that needs the same role every day.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think you can have some of that versatility, as you had mentioned, on the margins. Obviously, it would be helpful if every single person on the roster can play every single position. But I know guys want consistency, especially for your guys that are implemented into this lineup each and every single day. And then you want to supplement those guys on the roster with other guys that are glue-like guys that can help hold this roster together, that can play a bunch of different positions, whether they come up through the minor leagues or from another organization. You want those guys to really help supplement this roster, which is one of the areas that the Dodgers had addressed during the trade deadline. We can get to that in just a minute. But as you had mentioned with Bobby Miller, I think keeping him on that same routine is good. I want him to get back to the type of pitcher that he was. I think he's going to be the most valuable if he is a starting pitcher. But if they do ever transition him to being a late inning relief, I think that has to be over the course of the offseason.
Hey, we're going to get into that right now. As a matter of fact, Austin is going to get into this pretty heavy. And let me get some video up here of the young man that we're talking about. Austin, Roy Estrada has a question about Jackson Ferris. Of course, the young man, keep in mind, Jackson Ferris is only 20 years old. And so the question that that Roy Estrada has about Jackson Ferris is he ready to come up in the major leagues? Of course, the answer to that is no at this point. He's at the high A level, and he's only 20, but I'll let you dive into that, Austin.
Yeah, so Jackson Ferris, for those of you who didn't get a chance to watch the game yesterday for high A Great Lakes, Jackson Ferris pitched 8 no-hit innings. Now, this is becoming a bit of a trend as far as the recent success for Jackson Ferris. Left-handed pitcher, came over in the trade with Michael Busch. He has been absolutely electric, absolutely phenomenal. I've had the privilege to be able to watch basically every single one of his starts, at least on TV. I've seen probably 7 or 8 of his starts in person, so I've seen some of the electric stuff that he has. He has a really good pitch mix, and what I love about Jackson Ferris is just the way he's been able to further grow in confidence and in his location. You saw a lot of times early in the season, you could see the stuff was there. You could see the breaking ball falling off the table or the slider chasing away or down and into hitters. You could see the stuff really play. But there would be a couple of pitches that he would leave right over the heart of the plate that would get slammed for home runs, in which case he would turn a good, solid 5-inning performance into a 5-inning performance that he gave up 4 runs. You've seen him clean up a lot of his commands. A lot of the consistency has been really, really solid over the course of the past couple of months. And so just looking at overall for his season this far, he has a 3.39 ERA in Great Lakes, a 3.06 FIP, and a 3.46 expected FIP. What I really want to look at is the course over the past 2 months at the high Great Lakes level since the start of June. And remember, this is 10 starts, including a performance when he went only less than an inning against Lake County. During that stretch, which is 10 starts, he had a 1.93 ERA, a 2.45 FIP, struck out 32% of hitters. He's finding his groove. He's finding his command. He's made the promotion right up to the AA level. He's now going to be a Tulsa driller, which is incredibly exciting because I think future Dodgers had tweeted out that he is going to be the youngest pitcher in the entire Texas League, if not the entire AA. Jackson Ferris, one of those young, incredibly talented, left-handed starting pitchers within this organization, a 100% steal, one of those guys that you're going to be thinking about as one of the best prospects in the pitching prospects in the game of baseball if this trend continues. And what's also great about him, he's starting to pitch for length too. There's a lot of talk about the Dodgers, and some of them in the past, they typically like to keep a lot of their starting pitchers not going too terribly far. I think I remember last year we mentioned that Landon Knack was one of the only, if not the only starter who went 7 innings in all of Oklahoma City for a starter last season. Well, for Jackson Ferris, over his past couple of outings, let me just read to you some of the innings pitched per his last 6 or 7 outings. On the 23rd of June, it was 6 innings. Then he had the rough start where he didn't get out of the first against Lake County. Then 7, 6, 6, 7, and 8. That is length. He's learning how to pitch incredibly well, and now he gets to go up against some really solid AA hitters in the Texas League. I couldn't be more excited for Jackson Ferris.
And the thing I like about him, too, obviously, is that big sweeping slider and the big fastball, that one you just saw right there. But he was holding the 96. I mean, he was hitting 96, and he was hitting 96 as late as the 8th inning.
Yeah.
So the stamina shows that he is going to be able to hold all of his velo. He's going to be able to hold all of whatever it is in his mix that night is making him very good. So that 8 innings, just looking at the velo numbers and how he's able to hold them, is not a stretch or extensive for him. I definitely think he could have, of course, he was at 98 pitches. He definitely could have kept going, and I think he would have been just fine. But I can tell you this, man, when you got a guy that's left-handed like that you're getting ready to promote to AA, which means once you're in AA, you're one call away. We saw Michael Grove go straight from AA. We saw Emmett Sheehan go straight from AA. He's a lot closer than you think when he gets to Tulsa. Just trust me on that deal. Those guys know that. There's no reason in a high A game to push that. I think Dave and Richard made the right decision on that.
Yeah, I think that was the right decision. Obviously, the organization sets some type of limit. There's a little bit of flexibility there, but Jackson Ferris was exceeding his pitch count, the amount of pitches that he has thrown in a game this season. I think that's probably smart. You want to care about the long-term health and success of Jackson Ferris as opposed to potentially a no-hit outing against Cedar Rapids. I know it was a little bit frustrated to see that. And of course, the no-hit came off a fluky fly ball that just landed in the exact right spot off Michael Martinez. But Jackson Ferris, as you had mentioned, he's much closer than people realize. We talked about Justin Robleski, pitched the entire 2023 campaign in Great Lakes. Next thing you know, by midsummer, he was up in Dodger blue. If we take the exact same trajectory, and let's say that a Jackson Ferris goes out there and performs incredibly well for Tulsa, then he's just one call up away, in which case you could see him getting the call up pretty soon. So I think he's a lot closer than a lot of people think. And that road from high A, I say this quite a bit, the road from high A, Great Lakes to LA is very short now, especially for pitchers. Muted, Casey.
It certainly is. It can be long. I've seen guys get stuck in AA for quite some time. Brandon Lewis, Antonio Knowles, guys like that. But it doesn't have to be. I mean, if he keeps pitching like he is right now and makes himself undeniable, then it definitely doesn't have to be from that perspective. But, hey, we have a great crowd logging in. We want to thank everybody for joining us here on Dodgers Dawgs as part of the Dodgers Daily Network. Here in the Friday night in the Big Town, as Austin Brubaker, Casey Porter here join, waiting for some great Dodgers baseball night. Hey, Dodgers haven't been playing very well. Very timely day off. I said this with Coach Holt on Wednesday in our Wednesday show. The Dodgers in the next 4 days, of course, that was Wednesday, so starting yesterday, and then over this weekend series with the A's, they need to not lose a game in the next 4 days. They need to sweep the A's, and they need to make it look good.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, and this Oakland A's team has been playing some decent enough baseball. They've got some hitters. They got some young talent that is going there. That is not an excuse for this Dodgers team. They need to feel good about themselves. They need to get themselves on the right track. Getting swept against the San Diego Padres, who are creeping up in the National League West standings, only 4.5 games back now. That is not a good feeling if you are a Dodgers. You can't have, especially with the bullpen being taxed, with the lineup and the pitching staff being as injured as it is, you can't give the Padres, the Diamondbacks, hope to go after the National League West. You need to make sure that that is on lockdown. It has been on lockdown the entire season. However, if it keeps getting closer and closer and closer, you're going to be on your heels. And if you're on your heels, especially when you need to give some of these bullpen arms some rest, you need to make sure that they're good and ready to go for the postseason. That can present a lot of issues for this Dodgers team. You need to get as many wins as you can, and especially when the opportunity presents itself to go against the Oakland Athletics, who are not a playoff team. They are not a great baseball team. You have to take advantage of that.
Yeah, some really awful news, man. This deal about Freddie Freeman's son, this is just, it's just awful. It's gut-wrenching. I hate to even talk about it because I don't know if I can make it through it. It's a gut-wrenching situation. I don't even know what to say.
Yeah, there's nothing that you can say. It's heartbreaking. Your heart goes out to Freddie Freeman. Your heart goes out to his family. He needs to be there right now. That is 100% transparent. So however long it takes, long
the baseball so far,
yes.
Forget baseball. I mean, just absolutely forget that. Whatever it takes.
Yes.
Yeah, baseball, whatever. But no, this is.
Yes. Yeah, he needs to be there for that. So our thoughts, our prayers are going to be out for him, his family, for his son. That is 100% clear. He will be back at some point, but that right now, that's where he needs to be, and that's where he's going to be, and he should be.
Absolutely. Hey, good evening, Orlando. Good evening, John Quimby. Thank you so much for joining. Good evening, Gregory, our wonderful moderator. If you have any questions, Gregory can answer them. If you have a question that maybe we can't answer, MH, Bobby would be really valuable in the bullpen. We covered that just a minute ago. NorCal, Eddie Miller just scratched from the start due to abductor injury. Yes, he was tonight. And scratched doesn't mean that he's going to miss like an entire rotation. It just means that maybe he'll start tomorrow, maybe he'll start Sunday. And I'll say this about Oklahoma City. They had 9 position players, I believe it was on whatever the day was after the trade deadline, because they lost Trey Sweeney. And so if you look at the Oklahoma City pitching staff, it's like you go down the line, and it's kind of too bad sometimes because if you're the Oklahoma City Baseball Club, you're wanting to promote Walker Buehler being in the town. You're wanting to promote Bobby Miller being in a town, or Landon Knack, or whoever it is. But then whenever you look at the probable starters, they never have it listed until the next day because everything's always so in flux. Yeah. So if you're the Oklahoma City Baseball Club and you're trying to put it on a billboard, hey, come see Bobby Miller on Thursday, you can't really do it. So the scratch to Bobby Miller tonight, I think that's definitely 1,000% precautionary. It doesn't have me concerned whatsoever, because also it's a situation to where they have time with Bobby Miller. There's enough pitching depth with Justin Robleski. They had to send down Justin Robleski just the other day. There is enough pitching depth to get Bobby Miller right. That's another reason why I don't think he comes back in the pen, because they have time to get him right before they ever need to bring him back up to the major leagues. That may or may not be this year. Whatever time that is to say, okay, Bobby Miller is Bobby Miller. They have time to do that at the AAA level. And that includes all these little nagging injuries that they feel like, hey, we can just give them a day or two off, or however long it may be, because we have time.
That is absolutely correct. They have guys that are at the AAA level who have shown that they can be incredibly successful at the major league level, yet because of the roster limitations at the major league level, they're not able to call them up. Case in point with Justin Robleski being down there, Landon Knack being at the AAA level as well. Those are guys that can really help this team down the stretch, make sure that whatever the pitching arms are up at the major league level are as healthy and as rested as possible. That is some of the value of having good, talented young pitchers down at the minor league level. Not only can they go up and provide some innings, they can provide quality innings, as they have shown each and every single time. So with the Bobby Miller, I don't think you want to do similar things to what you've done with other starting pitchers and say, hey, this is one of those guys we have a huge ceiling for. He's not 100% there quite yet, but we think he might be able to get that. Make sure Bobby Miller is good. Make sure Bobby Miller is right. Make sure he is healthy. Whatever that takes to get him to that point, you do have time. You do have options to be able to help fill in that role until he's at that point, because I don't want a 75% Bobby Miller. I want 100% Bobby Miller, him being at that level. And until then, we've got 100% Justin Robleski. We've got 100% Landon Knack, who can go in and provide really quality innings for this team.
Absolutely. The difference, you mentioned Ronan Kopp. They moved him to the bullpen to get his stuff to play up. Difference between Bobby Miller and Ronan Kopp, for one, Ronan Kopp's like 1-5 to the plate. So as a starting pitcher, and he loses the strike zone sometimes. So a combination of a starting pitcher of walking guys and then not being able to hold them at first base, they're just going to steal second, third on a guy like Ronan Kopp. Versus, so you take a guy like that and you say, Ronan, your best chance is in small windows you don't let anybody on base, because they're going to be stealing bases on you. So what we're going to do is every pitch that you throw is going to be completely maxed out, and every pitch you throw is going to be meant to not let somebody on base. There is no economy to this. You go out and do whatever it takes to not let people on base. That's where Ronan Kopp's at. Bobby Miller is not in that scenario. So from that perspective alone, it makes total sense to move Ronan Kopp to the pen. Plus you have Justin Robleski, Maddox Brunge, you got Jackson Ferris, you have lefties down there that are very talented, so you have the depth to be able to do that. And then for number two, Ronan Kopp's basically a two-pitch pitcher. He's a fastball slider guy. I think he drops in a changeup every now and then, but it's more of a show-me pitch. Bobby Miller legitimately can be a six-pitch guy. He can have all your north-south stuff, the high-riding fastball, both fastballs, four-seam, two-seam. And then he also has the changeup, he has the curveball, he has the slider, and then he also has, a little cutter-type pitch. So, I mean, he can be as many as six pitches, where, to me, Ronan is a two-pitch guy. And when you take a six-pitch guy, like they did with Jake Pilarski, that throws the ball really hard, and then you say, okay, man, you got one inning to get to those six pitches. Sometimes it's really hard for those guys to get in a rhythm because they don't really know where to start as far as their mix goes. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think with Bobby Miller, I think he's going to be best out as the starter. I think that's where the Dodgers are going to maximize the value. I want him to get right there. And I don't think if he goes and transitions to the bullpen, all the struggles that we've seen with Bobby Miller thus far at the minor league level and even at the major league level a little bit are going to disappear. I think he's got to work through this stuff. And once he comes back as a starting pitcher, I have full confidence in his ability to be an ace type level starting pitcher. That is where his potential is. If he gets anywhere close to that potential, the Dodgers have an incredibly valuable piece. Casey, you're muted.
Sorry, I mute that so you don't hear my dogs in case they start barking in the background while Austin's talking. Okay, so we have I'm glad. Thank you for. And anytime that happens, tell me right away, Austin. Okay, so all right, we have a question about Dalton Rushing. He's been playing some left field. Of course, he hit the walk-off home run last night. So the question is, Austin, here is the walk-up. Let me get to that right here. Let me back that up and move you over to the walk-off. There is right here. Boom. That's actually not the walk-off. I'll get to that here in just a sec. Actually, that's part of the video. You'll get to the walk-off as this video goes on. But the question is, could they bring up Dalton Rushing because now he plays left field to get his bat in the lineup? The answer to that is not this year. I don't even think he's on the radar this year. But I will say, and I said this the day of the trade, Garrett Crochet was the target pitching-wise, and guess who they wanted? They wanted Dalton Rushing. Yep. And they're smart, man. And but the Dodgers are smarter because the Dodgers went, we ain't giving this guy away. So I'm going to say it again, okay? Don't look at this from a fitting the pieces of the puzzle together type perspective. Don't look at it like the Portland Trail Blazers looked at Michael Jordan when they took Sam Bowie instead because they needed a center. Don't do that. Look at Dalton Rushing in the sense of The biggest complaint that you get from Dodgers fans is that this team's not gritty enough. Dave Roberts is too nice. The players are too nice. They just kind of float through games and they have fun and everything's positive and everything's full of peaches and roses and all this stuff. Not Dalton Rushing. Dalton Rushing is going to kick every one of his teammates' asses. He's going to make sure they are as fiery as he is. They're going to make sure that they play with passion, just like he does. And also, another thing that Dodgers fans bellyache and whine about, myself at the top of this list, is that they're not clutch enough. They don't hit very well with runners in scoring position. They don't come through when it matters the most. Well, that's when Dalton Rushing does his best work. If you look at what he did at Louisville, in the conference tournament, in the regional and the super regional, he went 20 for his last 50. And that's against probably about 10 different professional arms. When he got to the professional level, in that series when he got brought up to Great Lakes, you got to see it with your own eyes, Austin. He got 2 absolutely massively clutch hits. He comes up clutch time after time after time with Tulsa. And if you ask any of the pitchers that pitch to him, he gets the best out of them by making sure and injecting just straight fire into their veins. So there's more reasons to say Dalton Rushing can hit. That's not, yes, that was a big factor in the Dodgers keeping him, but there's way more orbiting factors to this young man than just that.
Yeah, you are 100% right with that. It is very noteworthy to say that the Dodgers were not willing to trade Dalton Rushing when they have Will Smith backed up at catcher for 10 years. I think that just goes to show how much and how valuable Dalton Rushing is, both as a player and as a leader on the team. You mentioned his leadership ability. His desire to win is 100% transparent. And it's even some of the little things. So the way that he works with his pitchers, it's the way that he goes and communicates to some of the other hitters from the batting box in the dugout. He is an absolute gritty player, leader who has stepped up when the moments have shined, not just with the clutch home run to win the game yesterday, but as you had mentioned, with the Midwest League Championship Series. I mention this all the time because it was the biggest moment to his career at that point. Had 3 home runs in a 3-game series, including a 2 home run performance, just went absolutely off during that championship, an entire playoff series. He is gritty. He is performing incredibly well during this season. 142 WRC plus, striking out less than 20% of the time.
What'd you say his WRC plus is?
142
in the Texas League.
In the Texas
League. That's hard to do, man. That's compared to every other player in that Texas League. There are some great players. Well, Bobby Witt Jr. and MJ Melendez for the Royals, they got pulled up straight from Double-A. The Royals do that more times than not. The Royals will pull out of Northwest Arkansas than they will Omaha. So you're comparing Dalton Rushing with that 142 WRC plus with probably 15 to 20 guys at the Double-A level that will go straight from where they're at to the major leagues.
And he is doing that as a catcher, with working with this pitching staff and all of the duties, the extra duties that come with being a catcher. I think that is incredibly great for Dalton Rushing. Now, the original question was, does Dalton Rushing make it to the big leagues this season? I think the answer is no, not because he isn't talented enough to do so. I think there are a lot of pieces that are blocking his way. Also, I think he just has, I believe, 2 games now out in left field. I don't think you want to throw Dalton Rushing or any player who has only played 2 games out in left field out there just to see how it goes, see how it works when he's just learning that position. But I think that is an indication of their dedication to Dalton Rushing going forward, because these are the type of things that have to happen if you want to get Dalton Rushing to the big league level. If you want to get him to LA, you have catcher that is backed up with Will Smith. You have first base that is backed up with Freddie Freeman. You have the designated hitter that's backed up with Shohei Ohtani. All 3 positions that Dalton Rushing had played. Sure, he can get a couple of starts here or there, maybe 2-3 starts a week, maybe with each one of those at catcher.
Look at that hustle. Look at that. Hold on, sorry. I don't mean to cut you off, but watch this, guys. And this is just a routine single. Watch this. This is every single time he plays on the field. This is a routine single. And he has to put on the brakes because, I mean, this dude plays hard every second of the day.
every single second, Dalton Rushing is going out there and giving it his all, and that is a testament to the character that Dalton Rushing has. But going back to what I was saying, his playing time was going to be blocked if he remained primarily catcher, first base, maybe designated hitter, which is exactly what he was doing beforehand. Now, and this is something we even talked about during the offseason, we were talking about how they were going to do this. If you add a little bit more positional versatility to Dalton Rushing, which that's going to add a little bit more to his plays, and perhaps that's going to stretch him a little bit more. But if you're able to add that, especially if he's able to get comfortable with that at the minor league level, where he's already feeling comfortable hitting at the plate, which right now with a 142 WRC plus, he's feeling comfortable at the plate right now. If you can add that to left field or whatever else the Dodgers have in mind as far as adding positional versatility, whether that's left field and maybe third base, or even if it's just left field, that's creating additional avenues for Dalton Rushing to be able to make it onto the field. So even though 40-man roster is full, even though there's going to be a lot of guys that are going to be coming off this 40-man roster after the season, and then you could start seeing inevitable paths for Dalton Rushing to make it onto this major league roster, not just as a backup catcher, but as a player that they can plug and play and help give guys day off, both Will Smith, but also at various positions, because Dalton Rushing, with his competitive fire, with his ability to have clutch base hits, and with everything that he has, he's going to force his way onto the field. Right now, he's forcing his way into the Dodgers equation. The White Sox wanted him desperately. The Dodgers were not willing to give him up. They still got the top pitcher that was available, that was traded at the trade deadline, not necessarily available, but traded at the trade deadline. And it was very noteworthy.
Good differentiation. Yes, traded is different than available. I think Garrett Crochet was available. Yes. I think that's a good way to put it. I think if the Dodgers wanted to put the right package together, I said this, they could have gotten Crochet, but they definitely did get the best player that was traded.
That is correct. And it is very noteworthy that they did not want to give up Dalton Rushing. That is very evident, and I think they're smart to do so. If you sit down and just watch him play. Go ahead and watch him play. I think he's going to prove himself and why. Or just talk to him. Yeah, that's absolutely right.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, I mean, he's a special kid, man. He's a special player.
Yeah, he is.
And this is Ryan Ward. We have a question about Ryan Ward. Ryan Ward over James Outman. The problem with that is Ryan Ward does not play center field. James Outman is a tremendous defensive outfielder. And I tell you, the same thing I'm hearing. The question is, would he clear waivers? And he wouldn't. He wouldn't clear the first 30 seconds of waivers. I mean, that wouldn't last that long. He was, a 4.5 WAR player last year? Is that right, Austin?
That is correct.
He was given 36 games to prove himself. That's not baseball. The Dodgers, point blank, they love veterans. They don't give their rookies the right runway, which is what's great when a guy like Miguel Vargas gets to go somewhere else and make something out of himself, or like Jordan Leisure, or maybe
Bush.
Someday. Yeah, Michael Bush, not Daniel Hudson, but Brian Hudson at Milwaukee, no doubt about that. So James Outman, squarely put, wasn't given the proper amount of runway. Now, did he produce in the 196 at-bats or whatever it was whenever he was the starter at the beginning of the year? No, he was terrible offensively. He did not look like – I'm going to say this point blank. I love James Outman. He did not look like he had any confidence. He didn't look like he had a plan. He didn't look like he was anywhere close to hitting the baseball. So I have zero issues with the way it played out, other than the fact that I've been saying this all year. You can send James Outman down to AAA Oklahoma City. It doesn't matter. That's not what his issues are. They're not swing mechanic related. They are making adjustments at the major league level related. So he needs to be somewhere where he's getting major league at-bats, and wherever he's getting major league at-bats, he is going to be that 4-WAR player that we saw last year. He is that good. This is the same thing from Dodgers fans who give their prospects 90-some-odd at-bats before they start talking about putting the guy on waivers. Okay, just look at all the great players that have played in the game that have had 100 at-bat streaks that have looked like James Outman. I think what you'll find is all of them, other than maybe like your Hall of Famers, all of them have gone through a stretch like this. This is just something that happens in the game of baseball. So I say that to say this is the same thing I heard about Ryan Pepio. This is the same thing I heard about Gavin Stone, their first times through. The same thing I heard about Michael Grove. The same thing that I heard about Michael Bush. And now he gets everyday playing time, and he has an OPS a little over 800, and he's a 260, 270 hitter like we said he would. This is all about not giving proper runway to a very talented young man, to where if he did have the proper runway, yes, is he going to strike out too much? Likely his strikeout rate, no matter where he's at, is going to be 30% plus. I think he could reduce it some, but he's going to play an elite defensive outfield. He's going to give you somewhere around 20 home runs, and he's going to steal somewhere around 20 bases in a scenario to where he knows he can have a month that's not as good and still be the squared-on starter. The same thing that they did for him last year. You saw him make the adjustments, and he was as good or better in August of last year than he was at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, so let's go through a couple of different points. So first, I want to address the person that we're actually showing footage of.
This is Ryan Ward.
Ryan Ward now, who is an outfielder down at Oklahoma City. He was there all of the 2023 campaign. He's been in Oklahoma City all of the 2024 campaign. He has 26 bombs on the season. He's hitting 264, 327 with a basically 600 slugging percentage, 115 WRC plus at Oklahoma City. He's hitting really well for the baseball club. And with Ryan Ward, I'd love to see him get an opportunity. I've received messages about other people who are fans of other teams that are interested in getting a Ryan Ward and just seeing what he's able to produce, because right now he's just sitting down at the Oklahoma City level. I think with the Dodgers, and this is I think as you had mentioned before, they do have they do like having a lot of veteran presence on their team. And I think it would be very difficult for the Dodgers right now, given the moves that they made at the trade deadline, and given the 40-man roster at the state where it is, where they have guys that are on the 60-man injured list that are going to need to come back at some point. It's going to be very difficult to add anybody who's not on the 40-man roster right now onto the 40-man roster and find some sort of role for him. I think that's an inevitable difficulty with a guy like Ryan Ward. Now, with Wardo, I think he's got to continue to prove himself down at the minor league level, because it's not just the Dodgers that are watching. Every single other organization is watching what he's been able to do. And I think they are incredibly impressed with what he's put up, the home run power that he has. I think you've seen a resurgence in him. And I think it is likely that he is a Rule 5 draft pick next season. I don't think there's really any question about that. And I'm assuming that the Dodgers aren't going to add him onto the 40-man roster, not because of the talent that he has, but because I think there's going to be better opportunities for him elsewhere. And so that's what my hope would be. Not because I don't want to see him on the Dodgers, but because I want to see Ryan Ward playing time. As far as
one path, they could put him on there and then DFA him and then try to trade him. At least they would be getting something out of him from that perspective. I could see him do that.
They could potentially do that if a 40-man roster spot opens up. I don't know exactly what the Dodgers' plan is for that. Or they could wait if they decided to wait until the offseason, perhaps once the World Series concludes, try to figure out, especially for some of these older guys, there's going to be a 40-man roster crunch at some point, and we can talk through that during the offseason as far as how the Dodgers are going to be able to maneuver with all of the guys that are even on the 60-day injured list right now. I think some of those guys are going to have to be traded, as well as some of the guys that are going to be Rule 5 eligible. I think this is one of those guys you could potentially see traded. Now, as far as James Outman is concerned, look, it has been a struggle this season. I don't think Casey and I are going to sugarcoat that. It's been more of a struggle this season. Last season, we saw the true potential that James Outman has, which is one of the most valuable center fielders in the game of baseball. And it is our belief that if he is able to get enough playing time, I believe he can reach that potential again. It takes commitment to work through a lot of the struggles in order to get to that point. Similar to what the Dodgers have seen through a guy like a Gavin Lux. They've been committed to Gavin Lux throughout the entire season, and recently he's been one of the best hitters in their entire lineup. That patience has been paying off at least a little bit. You can say that's a little bit due to injury. You can say it because of Mookie Betts and because of necessity to play Gavin Lux. But when he has come up and he's starting to perform a lot better, I think a lot of those struggles and a lot of that things that he's got to work out can come for James Outman if he gets consistent every day at bats at the major league level. Right now, I don't see a path where he's going to get every single day at bats at the major league level.
Oh, I don't see a path where he's even going to be on the 26-man roster after this next move.
I think that is absolutely right, and I think he's the next guy. As far as when somebody comes back healthy, I think it's likely that he's going to be back in Oklahoma City. You saw the Dodgers, one of their trades, I think it was the last trade that they had made, was to go out and get a Kevin Kiermaier. I think he fits the exact same role that a James Outman would, in which case I don't think the Dodgers are envisioning or have James Outman in their plans for the postseason. We can go into that conversation as far as whether that was the best thing for the Dodgers to do. Both really solid out there in center field. Kevin Kiermaier has been a 3-time Gold Glove Award winner. He's a tremendous center fielder out there. James Outman is very good at center field. He's a tremendous center fielder out there as well. I don't want to make any bones about who's better out there defensively center field, but both are incredibly talented. Both have struggled with the bat quite a bit. Two very similar profiles. The Dodgers, with the trade for Kevin Kiermaier, unless he falls apart completely during the playing time that he has with the Dodgers, in which the case they can cut ties with him. Right now, they are choosing him over James Outman. I think that's pretty apparent. He's going to get the start, so we'll see how he does.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And I have zero problems with Kevin Kiermaier. And the biggest reason is he's retiring after this year. Yeah. And so I think this is the plan with James Outman, and I have no problems with this plan. Again, hey, James did not perform the way that he was supposed to perform. All he had to do was just be okay, and he would have been the starting center fielder all year for Los Angeles. He didn't hold up that end of the bargain. I am not trying to make excuses for James Outman. What I am trying to say is nobody's ever going to convince me, though, that if you would have had all season long like Gavin Lux did, that he would not have turned into the player that he was last year. He would have figured it out. He is that good of a player. That is what I'm saying about James Outman, and you have seen him do that at the major league level. So here you are. You have this team with Shohei Ohtani on it. You have this team that's spent billions of dollars. You got San Diego getting a Luis Ariz, getting Tanner Scott, and all these. Hey, San Diego's legit. Arizona Diamondbacks made it to the World Series last year. So you're in this win now mode. Honestly, Austin, I really don't have any problem. And let me cut this back. The Dodgers have just, in my opinion, punted this season for James Outman. They've just said, hey, it hasn't worked this year. Not going to work. Let's go get a guy that's only going to be here till the end of last year. Let's see if we can get James Outman figured out in the offseason, and let's see if we can get him in a position next spring training to become the James Outman that he was last year again. I'll be honest with you, I love James Outman. I really think that's where the organization is at. And if that is their viewpoint on him, let's punt him for this season. We can't figure it out. We don't have time. It's getting too late. Yeah. Let's see if we can figure him out for next year. I don't have any issues with that plan whatsoever. Am I making any sense here?
Yeah, I can't disagree with the organization with that. I get it. They're two very similar players, Kevin Kiermaier and James Outman. Kevin Kiermaier has done this. He's been a veteran. He's been to that moment before. He's been able to go through the adjustments, trying to figure out through the adversity how to hit big league pitching. I think if you put him in this environment, perhaps he can get things to click as he is in his last season of Major League Baseball. Perhaps. I don't know for sure. But with the James Outman, I think the Dodgers still recognize the talent level that is in there for him. I can't disagree with the organization and their thought. It's been a 51 WRC plus for
right.
James Outman
You
on
can't
this
argue.
season.
You just can't.
You can't have a 50%
Whatever the
low.
organization does with James Outman this year, you cannot argue it. What I'm arguing is you can't punt this guy forever like Dodgers fans want to
exactly.
do. And I just don't think the organization will. You can punt him for this year and in the like I said, in the sense of saying, hey, we still love you, James. We still think you're going to be our starting center fielder. It's not going to be this year, man. We're going to punt this year. I think that's a totally fair situation.
Yep, and if they decided to, you know what, we're done with James Outman, 29 other organizations would have their phone call immediately, and they would do whatever they could to get James Outman because of the potential that is still in that bat, because of the potential that is still in that type of player. 4 WAR players are incredibly difficult to find, and
if they ever do it once in their career, ever.
4 WAR players that make the league minimum are even rarer for teams to find, and there's a lot of organizations would do whatever they could to try to get that. James Outman still has tremendous potential, still has a good career ahead of him. It's not working out this season. You can't blame the Dodgers for what they did with Kevin Kiermaier. I think I think a lot of what they did this season, and there's been other people that have stated this, I think they're trying to raise the floor of a lot of the offensive production that has been around this team, just trying to raise that further, not necessarily reach the entire potential or reach for massive potential, because they've got a lot of guys that have tremendous upside and tremendous potential. I think they've got to make sure that they have a good, solid foundation that can help get to those other guys. I think that's what a lot of the moves during this trade deadline were intended for, especially on the offensive side.
Yeah, their answer is always to get older, and it never works. It hasn't worked yet. So the raise the floor thing, first of all, they don't raise the floor by going and getting – they haven't, at least to this point, by going and getting a Jason Hayward or a Kevin Kiermaier or even like a David Peralta or somebody like that who actually didn't hit terrible or anything like that, or a Trace Thompson or even a Nick Ahmed, or bypassing Andre Lipsius for Kevin Biggio. That's how the Dodgers always make decisions, and every time that's said, they go get a major league veteran to raise the floor, and it doesn't actually raise the floor, but it does cap the potential of their prospects. Nobody will ever be able to convince me of that differently. Having said that, if you're going to be a Dodgers fan, like I have been forever, then that's just something as far as the decision-making that they make that you have to come to grips with, and you can't just sit around and complain about it all the time. Doesn't mean you have to actually believe it. You're going to hear it every single time they make a move like that. There's no way you're going to tell me that Kevin Kiermaier is going to raise the floor higher than a James Outman, or that Tommy Edman could be better than any of the some of the younger. It could be better than maybe like an Alex Freeland just because he can play center field and shortstop, which to me in a playoff scenario means absolutely nothing. Okay, so a guy can play 5 positions. So what? We need to beat the Padres tonight. What good does a guy playing 5 positions do for you in that game? Put your best 9 players in the best 9 positions they play. The teams that do that the most are the teams that are going to win. So, I mean, as far as that goes, I don't buy into the raising the floor thing. I think it's an excuse for the Dodgers to revert back to just the way that they make decisions. The way they make decisions are they love veterans. They let the kids come out and play for the first part of the year, then they put them to bed for the second part of the year. It's rinse and repeat every single year.
When I'm saying raise the floor, which I totally agree with a lot of that, especially with the capping and taking time away from a lot of the minor league players. Totally
I wasn't disagreeing
with
you. I wasn't trying to be controversial with you there. I was just saying about the decision making.
And here's what I'm saying as far as raising the floor. This doesn't just apply to James Outman. I think this applies to a lot of the other veteran players who have not
Kevin Biggio, Trace Thompson.
Well, actually, I have an interesting note about Kevin Biggio we'll get into in just a second. But like guy like a Kike Hernandez has a 64 WRC plus on the season. That is not good. That is 36% below league average. With a guy like a Chris Taylor, I think they are on watch, especially with him being injured right now. There's a lot of question marks as far as him coming back. With a Nick Ahmed, I think he's just filling in a role until a Miguel Rojas is able to come back. I think there are some of these moves that you can make. I'm not just saying this for some of the rookies or some of the young guys. I think this applies to everybody across the board. Now, I'm a little bit, and we can get into this discussion. I think we intended to have this discussion during during the past couple of times.
Yeah,
I'm significantly higher than Casey is on a Tommy Edman type move. I think it is important. And I also think that if you look at the history of postseason games, late inning games, a lot of these games have turned into shorter stints for starters, heavier emphasis on the big time relief pitchers. But it also has turned into a matchup game as well, into a game where you utilize your bench quite a bit. And especially for this Dodgers team that has seen an incredible amount of injuries, or guys that have had to leave because of injuries or other circumstances. I think you need guys on this team that can help fill in positionally, basically just about anywhere that you need it. And I think with a guy like a Tommy Edman, who has been around.
Who was that guy for Arizona last year?
I don't know exactly all of the players.
Who was the guy
Arizona.
for the Padres 2 years ago that did that to the Dodgers?
I would have to go back and check the Padres or the Diamondbacks roster. I know Ketel Marte can play second. He can play some of the outfield. He can do a little bit of positional versatility as well. I don't know exactly all of their rosters as far as each one of the players, but I think there needs to be guys, and there can be guys that can help fill in roles. Look, this team doesn't know if Max Muncy is going to be coming back to this team. I think they're optimistic. I think they're hoping that Max Muncy is going to be able to come back, but you also don't know. You don't know exactly what you're going to get, or some of the injuries that could pop up during the course of the season. And with a guy like a Tommy Edman, who has been one of the best defensive players in the game of baseball throughout his entire career, he has a Gold Glove, and not just that, he's been in the 95th plus percentile in outs above average consistently, which you could say with defensive metrics, they're a little bit inconsistent. You could say they're not entirely accurate, but when it's telling the exact same story over and over and over and over again for a guy like him, similar to a guy like a Kevin Kiermaier, who's over and over and over again a really good center fielder out there. I think it's an immediate good sign for a guy like Tommy Edman, who can play shortstop, who can play second base, who can play third base, who can play the outfield, just about anywhere that this team needs. He can go ahead and fill in that position. Look, it'd be great if the Dodgers had 9 starters who they could say, hey, you're going to start each and every single one of these times, and you're going to be good both against righties and lefties. I think with major league teams, there's a lot of mixing and matching during playoff games. There is a lot of platooning, and a lot of times that they utilize bench. And with a guy like a Tommy Edman, look, we've complained quite a bit about the boom and bust mentality of this Dodgers team, where there's too much home run or nothing kind of potential. With a Tommy Edman, who has been around a league average hitter, 90 to 105 WRC plus, 99 WRC plus on his entire career, I think that is genuinely pretty good as far as what you need for an offensive player who is good at defense as he is, who strikes out at about a 16% clip, which is in the 85th percentile as far as strikeout percentage. I think that is really solid with what he's able to do. He puts the ball in play. He has 30 stolen base potential. I see a lot of really solid things. And with Tommy Edman, he was a couple of years ago a 5 WAR player. You don't find those guys very often. So with Tommy Edman, with Tommy Edman, I don't know exactly where his role is going to be. I don't know exactly what his position is going to be, but I think with what he has done, and this is something that he's accustomed to, being a versatile player, filling in with whatever role that needs to be, the Dodgers also don't know exactly where their holes are going to be, where their holes are going to pop up. Are they going to need somebody who's going to be decent enough at shortstop? Is what's going to happen to Miguel Rojas? Do we feel comfortable with a Mookie Betts still starting shortstop during the postseason? What's going to happen with a Max Muncy? What's going to happen as far as defense out in the outfield? The Dodgers don't know exactly what they're going to do with that. If you have a guy that has been a not only good defender, but an elite defender just about everywhere he's gone. Defender at every single position.
He's accumulated almost all of that at second base and right field?
He's done
a lot.
2
positions he will not play for the Dodgers.
During 44 games in center field, he accumulated about 5 outs above average, which is on pace for one of the better outs above average at center field during that season if you extrapolate to a full sample size. I think that can custom itself throughout just about any position, not just second base or maybe right field.
So he's played 44 games in center field total his entire career.
At the major league level.
And he's played none this year.
That's because he hasn't played a single game this season.
That's supposed to be a needle mover for a team that has Shohei Ohtani on it. That's a needle mover more that. So that's gonna be prioritized over making sure that a prospect with maybe more upside gets those opportunities. A guy that, again, who's played 44 games in center field. How many games he hadn't played near as? I mean, most of his career has been spent at second base, and he has not played all year long. He's been a below-average offensive player his entire career. He had one, and a lot of what bring him up to close to league average has all been come in 1 year. As far as that 5 whatever WAR year was, that's the guy that you're going to add to a team that is World Series or bust. That's sending all your prospects down because you gotta do everything you can to put yourself in the best position to win a World Series. That's the guy that I'm supposed to be convinced is moving the needle towards that.
I think he can play just about every single position. Let's look at some of the positions that he has played throughout his career. Let's see if I can get some of the career totals.
This is a good conversation, by the way.
Yeah. At second base, he's had over 2,000 innings, which has been some of the most. At shortstop, he has over 570 innings. Or third base, he's had over 570. He's had over 1,000 innings at shortstop. Left field, 46. Center field, 316. Right field, 495. So he's had a good cumulative amount of time.
Just to make it easier, say games instead of innings.
Okay, so let's go. I got to find some of the games as well. The innings were some of the things that were able to pop up most immediately. I don't have the.
And by the way, 99% of all fans are going to agree with you, Austin. Trust me, I know that.
All right, so let's go to games. So 307 at second base, 94 at third, 145 at short, 9 in left, 44 in center field, 76 in right field. So the outfield has a total of 129, almost a full season. Let's go to outs above average at each position. Second base, he has 21 outs above average throughout his career, 10 at third base, 15 at shortstop, 5 at center field, 4 in right field, meaning 9 in the outfield in those 858 or 120 innings or 129 games. I think there is incredible defensive ability that Tommy Edman has. And then when you talk about being we'll talk about offensive production, I think there are different degrees to offensive production. When you're talking about each one of these players, I think there's a difference between a Tommy Edman and a Kike Hernandez right now, or the way that James Outman is hitting right now. I think this is nothing against James Outman. I hate ragging on James Outman.
Absolutely.
I'm just exemplifying the difference between Tommy Edman, who let's take out the 2022 season, in which case he had a 106 WRC plus, which combined that with his defensive output was worth 5.5 WAR during that season. Let's say that he's closer to a 90 WRC plus. I think there's a difference between a 90 WRC plus at the bottom of your order, who's going to put the ball in play, who can also steal bags and play elite defense, and a 50 WRC plus who also strikes out a whole lot. I think putting the ball in play, I think, is really valuable. I think there are small aspects.
What is James Outman overall career WRC plus?
That's a really good question. I can look that up in just a second. Let me go ahead and pull it up, which obviously is going to pull significantly from the great season that he had last season.
Well, and that's the biggest sample size you have. I mean, that was a full season sample size.
Absolutely. And I think we're getting a sample size from a Tommy Edman who has 5 seasons of sample size, which is pretty good. So pretty solid for him. WRC plus for James Outman is 108 throughout his career.
He's 8% above league average when you combine his entire evidence of work. What is Tommy Edman's lifetime WRC plus?
It is 99.
Yeah. So the guy that you're replacing is, in his entirety of all of his sample size, is 9% better than the other guy. And by the way, James Outman's going to be a better center fielder than Tommy Edman. There's no way defensively. So he's been 9% better offensively throughout the entirety of his major league sample size. And he's going to be a better defender. And by the way, Tommy Edman hadn't played all year.
He has not played all season. He's still working through his progression. He's still looking for his rehab. But I'm not just saying that Tommy Edman is going to be the center fielder. He could also play a wide variety of different positions.
Is he better than Miguel Rojas?
At the shortstop position, Miguel Rojas is one of the best defensive shortstops. Is he better
offensively than Miguel Rojas?
Miguel Rojas, I would. It depends. I'd have to look at the data as far as what he's doing. I know Miguel Rojas has a better WRC plus so far this season, but you also want to look at other aspects as well, as far as the expected weighted on base percentage. I think there's a little bit less power with Miguel Rojas. With the Tommy Edman, you're getting 11 to 13 home run power, which you add that into the equation for him and his ability to put the ball in play. Miguel Rojas puts the ball a little bit more in play. I think if you like the style of play of a Miguel Rojas, I think you're going to like the style of play of a Tommy Edman, who also, looking at him, switch hitter, another aspect to his game that's really cool. I think the Dodgers have identified Tommy Edman for quite a while as being an incredibly valuable player.
No doubt.
And I think he's part of the equation and part of the just the way that the Dodgers go about and like to do business, or the type of players that they can have. Not that they should turn every single player into these type of players. I disagree with that, trying to turn every single player, especially as they're trying to get their way into Major League at-bats. So you know what? Let's change your position, and also you have to hit at this extreme level. I think that is unfair. With the Tommy Edman, he's done this throughout his entire career, changing positions.
He's been very consistent, no doubt.
And with this Dodgers team that seems to deal with a whole lot of injuries throughout their entire career, I think you need a guy that can go in and be able to help fill just about any single hole, not feel worried about it. I think the Dodgers, obviously, with this move and the Kevin Kiermaier move, obviously feel like there is a weakness defensively. And I think both of these moves have gone to help address that. Whether Tommy Edman is starting a game or whether he's coming in late to a game as a defensive replacement, perhaps a late inning pinch runner to steal a base. I think we'd all love to see him be able to do that, or whatever the role is. If he's at the bottom of the lineup, trying to turn the lineup over to the top of the lineup, I think he's an incredibly valuable player when he is right, even if he is slightly below league average offensively. I think that, plus the skill set that he has, I think is going to be incredibly valuable to this team. You don't need every single player. You love every single player to be well above league average.
I get the regular season part of it, that you need versatile guys like a Kike Hernandez, Chris Taylor, to fill in the holes because injuries pop up. But the playoffs part of it is where I'm struggling with it. Okay, in his career, major league career, Tommy Edman has 58 at-bats. He has a 224 batting average and an OPS of 584. Okay, so we're talking about raising the floor. I get it that he's been consistent on the major league level as far as being versatile and being able to fill in this and that for regular season. But what wins playoff games is not a 224 average and a 584 OPS. That doesn't even raise your floor in terms of, okay, well, here's what we know we have going into the postseason in terms of an offensive player. So I just don't get to where he actually raises the floor of the so compare that to, let me ask you this. Okay, let's say that you have a third base opening and it's Game 7 of the NLCS championship. Okay, do you want Kike Hernandez at third or Tommy Edman?
I'm going to guess this is going to go to as far as the playoff OPS, as far as the consistency.
Well, just whatever. I mean, just use, I've got to win this game. I'm Dave Roberts. I'm going to get fired if I don't make the World Series. If you're having to make that decision, who are you putting in? Are you putting in Kike Hernandez or Tommy Edman, who's had a 224 average, and he's never done it in a Dodgers uniform?
This is really tough, especially right now, because Tommy Edman has not played a single – well, he hasn't played a single game so far this season, so I have no idea what you're going off of. I have no idea who's hot. I can say the over-reliance, and I know this might be controversial, but this is something that Major League front offices typically tend to agree on. They typically look at the full season sample as opposed to what have they done during past postseasons. I think that provides them with a little bit bigger samples, so I think they're going to rely on that a little bit more. And right now, I think if you look at the production with Kike Hernandez. I'd rather see him come off the bench during a clutch moment because he's had a lot of success in high leverage situations. So if you want to find a role for Kike Hernandez, I think that is where you can have him right there. So I think there could be an argument with that. But we also haven't seen Tommy Edman during the 2024 season. We're making all of our judgments based off not games that we've spent a lot of time watching. It's a really great conversation. I know. And I'm sure there's not any animosity towards Casey and I.
Oh God, no. This is what we do, man.
This is the back and forth that needs to be had. I still think
you're one of the few human beings that can sit me down, man. That's good. I love it. I enjoy these kind of. It gets competitive. Now, it's not confrontational, but it does get competitive. Those are fun arguments.
Oh yeah, no, this is fun, and I think Tommy Edman's a really good player. I think you look at his career WAR has been anywhere when he's played consistently from about 2.5 all the way up to 5.5. I think he's been consistent. I think he's been rock solid. I think he's the type of player that I would look out for if I were the Dodgers as far as wanting them. I think it's a little bit less boom or bust. I think it's really good defense, really good on the margin type move, and perhaps you can make a really solid play defensively that makes you go, wow. He is a Dodger now. We're both going to be really excited to have 100%. Him on the team. And once he gets going, I think we're going to see the work ethic, and I think we're going to see something really good. I still want to see opportunities for a lot of these younger guys, though, to get opportunities. I get that this is going to limit some of those options, but I think he's a really solid player, and I think he's going to help this team.
So if production is the bottom line, says Norm Lee, I always talk about merit system, not country club. I think the Dodgers are in the country club system way too much, and they, like the Justin Robleski thing. I think that's a country club move. That's not a merit move. If they send down River Ryan, Landon Knack, those aren't merit moves. Those are country club moves based on, hey, these are the guys these are our dudes. Doesn't matter who does good, who does bad. These are our dudes, period, end of discussion. That's what I mean whenever I say country club versus who actually has been the better player. Are we going to play actually who's been the better player, whether it hurts people's feelings or not? That's the merit system. Guys like Jimmy Leland, they played on the merit system. Guys like Billy Martin, they played on the merit system. If you're not producing, sit your ass on the bench, and if you don't like it, you can kiss my ass. That's kind of the way that now, in today's day and age, it's not that cut and dry. You can't handle – you can still manage guys difficult like that and have very tough decisions, and guys respect you, but it still has to be done in quite a bit different way. But normally he says if production is the bottom line, then Knack or Robleski should be in the rotation over Kershaw. Stone apparently has hit a rookie wall, and his spot could typically be filled by either of those two. Those are great comments. Very difficult conversation to have, very touchy. It is okay, in my opinion, to both think that maybe Clayton Kershaw has passed his prime to be able to help the Dodgers and that there are better options than Clayton Kershaw. I think you can think that and then also just love Clayton Kershaw, just have him dearly square in your heart and him be one of your favorite Dodgers of all time and hold him in the highest of regards. But, there's two things that catch up with players, either talent, either you're not talented to keep going, or time. It's okay to think that time is caught up with Clayton Kershaw, but to then also honor and respect to the nth degree what he has meant to this Dodgers organization. I think you can do both.
That is absolutely right. We want the best players on this Dodger team as there can be. And sometimes there are guys that have been on this team that are not performing. And there are other guys that can fill in the shoes that have performed better. And right now, especially as you mentioned, Landon Knack and Justin Robleski, they're down at the minor league level. I think they would pitch better right now than a Clayton Kershaw, which should lead to some discussions. Okay, what is best for Clayton Kershaw to get him to his best? Is it going to be to pitch at the major league level, or whether it's going to be spending more time doing some rehab? I can tell you, if he continues to not provide length for this Dodgers team, if he continues to struggle, they're going to have to find something creative, because with the way that this bullpen is being taxed right now, this can't continue as far
Hey,
as
baby.
the short length. And that is not just something that is dealing with some of the rookies. I think that is dealing with a lot of the veterans. Your mindset for the best players have to perform also has to apply for the veteran players, which I think for too long it has not applied to a lot of those veteran type players. So Justin Robleski, Landon Knack, I want to see them get opportunities, and especially if some of these guys are needing rest. If some of these guys, you have a plan, you want to get them to where they can be productive at the postseason, but they're just too gassed right now. Why not go out there and do piggyback type games if you want to help this bullpen? Why not go out there and provide some
totally
length?
agree. I mentioned that earlier. I totally agree.
I think that would be, if you want to find a creative way to go about doing it, pull something out of the plan from what the Lansing Lugnuts had done a lot this season, which is have 6, 7, 8, 9 starters on their roster and do a lot of piggyback games, something that the Dodgers have done and some of these younger guys are accustomed to in order to provide days off for some of these relief pitchers. I think that could be something that could be of value for this Dodgers team going forward. If they're looking for creative ways to provide rest to this team, find different ways to make sure this team is as good to go during the postseason. I think there should be opportunities for both Landon Knack and Justin Robleski to be able to provide those types of outings, those types of appearances for this Dodgers team. As far as going to somebody like a Clayton Kershaw and a Gavin Stone, I think it's a little bit more concerning with Clayton Kershaw. Of course, with Gavin Stone, he's pitched really well this season. During the month of July, it was a little bit more of a struggle. I'm not giving up on Gavin Stone quite yet. Not at all. I still believe that he can work on this team. He doesn't rely completely on the swing and miss, which is going to lead to a little bit of variance with some of the batted ball data. I think he's going to figure it out. I think he's going to be starting a playoff game for this Dodgers team, and I think he's going to be really, really solid for them. I think you have to continue to work with him. As far as the other guys, I think there can be creative ways of how to implement them, especially if you want to make sure that your bullpen is not pitching as many innings. But I think this merit system applies to just about anybody. And I actually want to give a little bit of a shout out. Somebody who maybe not necessarily we haven't been as high on, but it's actually had a really good month of July. If I were to tell you a player on the Dodgers for their offense had a 152. Yes, I think some of these came from a couple of really games when he performed really well. But somebody on the Dodgers had a 152 WRC plus during the month of July for the Dodgers. Who do you think that would be, Casey?
I apologize. Say that one more time, Austin.
Okay, so somebody on the Dodgers, somebody you might not necessarily expect, had a 152 WRC plus during the month of July. Yes, this came from a couple of games when he performed incredibly well on the Dodgers team. 152 WRC plus.
Gavin Lux.
I don't know Gavin Lux. That is not the player I'm thinking of right now, though, and it's not Shohei Ohtani.
It's not Will Smith. Austin Barnes.
I don't know Austin Barnes, but that's not the player I'm thinking of. Probably the last player you're thinking of.
Yeah. Is it a starter, everyday starter?
He's getting a lot more playing time now, but typically you wouldn't envision him as an everyday starter.
I have no idea.
Kevin Biggio.
Oh, yeah.
152 WRC plus during the
month of July. How many at-bats is that in?
That's a really good question. I can look that up right now. As far as that is just with, it looks like 38 or so plate appearances. So still limited amount of sample size, but he performed with some of the time that he was able to perform. I think this mirror system applies across the board to just about anybody who the Dodgers put in their lineup. Obviously, Biggio, with the absence of Freddie Freeman, is getting a lot more time at first base. And
what is his overall OPS and WRC plus since he's become a Dodger?
That's a really good question. Let me go ahead and figure that out in just a second. It will take me just a minute in order to get that information to you. Yeah, and I think there's a lot of frustration with Dave Roberts, which, to be granted, I think there have been some moments where there's been some cause for frustration, but I also think that a lot of those decisions are organizational wide decisions. I think a lot of what he does is implement.
Sorry, I was muted right there. I'm having to mute myself so my dogs don't scream into your ear. So that last whole segment, let me go over that again.
No, okay? I heard you do that segment.
Yeah, no, the fans didn't, because I muted it on a different part of it. Okay, let me say this again. The question or the statement was, if they normally thinks that Friedman will find Dave Roberts a position in the organization instead of just firing him after this year. And my point to that is, if the Dodgers win a World Series, the only way he's going to consider firing him is if they don't make the playoffs, maybe lose in the first round. And if the Dodgers win a World Series this year, and you go by the criteria of other managers that have managed in the game, Dave Roberts, if he were to retire after this year and the Dodgers win a World Series, he is a Hall of Fame manager. He's closer to being a Hall of Fame manager than he is to being fired. Now, Dodgers fans, I get it. We see him every day. It's fun to question the manager. Yes, not every decision he makes has been great, but when you compare him even to other managers of other organizations that have had similar types of talent in the past, he has outperformed almost all of them. In the regular season, in the postseason, he's made 3 World Series. He's won 1. If he adds a second World Series, Dave Roberts is a Hall of Fame manager based on the criteria of the managers that are in right now.
Yeah, I think that is accurate. I think that is something that is often neglected. Now, Dodgers fans, obviously, I think a lot of them don't have a ton of confidence in Dave Roberts and his ability to get them over the top to that World Series, in which case you want the guy that is going to get you over the top to win a World Series. But I think a lot of the decisions that Dave Roberts makes, which there are certainly times when he has to make decisions, but I think a lot of the strategy, a lot of the planning is done beforehand, and it is organizational wide. I don't think every single decision that Dodgers fans have been frustrated and say that's Dave Roberts' fault. I think some of that was an organizational wide plan from the beginning, or something they had thought of, come to a consensus together. So if you have a problem with Dave Roberts, you probably have a problem with not just him, but a lot of other people within the organization as far as all of the decisions that are being made. That said, it's going to be a big season for Dave Roberts, so you hope that he's able to go over the top. He's certainly going to do everything that he can, because I think his legacy is going to be on the line, specifically over the course of the next 2 or 3 seasons during this peak where the Dodgers have to win a World Series. This is not just must win for the Dodgers, this is also must win for a Dave Roberts, who I think just about anybody in his shoes would want to win a World Series, but also want to make it to Cooperstown. I think that is on the line for a Dave Roberts, who has won so many acclimates, won so many games during the regular season. Adding that second World Series ring to his acclimate, I think, is just going to put him over the top. No doubt. Hey, Chuck Huddleston, it was a big mistake not to get a legitimate bat at the deadline. I wouldn't disagree with that, but I'm not sure who that bat would have been. Rosarina has struggled this year. That I just don't think that bat was out there, especially once Rise went off the board. That happened earlier this year. I think the Padres were smart to cut the legs out from the Dodgers in that situation. So I don't disagree with you that they should have got a big bat at the trade deadline. Where I would disagree with you is I just don't think there was one. And there certainly wasn't one worth giving up somebody like a Dalton Rushing for. If you're not willing to give up Dalton Rushing for Garrett Crochet, then there was no bat out there that would have been worth giving up the package that somebody was going to want. So I think that was the problem there. Jay says this goes back to our pinch hitting deal. In the National League Division Series last year, it was the Dodgers who pinch hit. Taylor Hernandez, Wong got pinch hit in games 2. Game 3, Taylor and Barnes. And my response to that is, who won those games? The team that pinch hit or the teams that didn't? Again, the best 9 players that play the best at their 9 positions they're the most comfortable for are the teams that are going to win. When you define roles, players play better as opposed to showing up every day, not knowing where you're going to be, and that only exacerbates itself whenever there is pressure on the line. So that would be my response to that. Normally, Edman should be at second base. Betts should be returned to right field. Well, I would say this. Gavin Lux has been the best offensive player. Now, hey, he hadn't been until this last month, but if Gavin Lux continues to play like he has in the last month, He's going to be in the
there's
lineup.
no way you can move him off of second base.
That's exactly right. If he continues to play like this, then he will be the second baseman for this Dodgers team. And I will be very happy to have him there because he's been incredibly productive over the past month or so, which is exactly, I think we had a show at the beginning of July where it said, well, this is starting to run out of time. And we were fair. We were straight about Gavin Lux.
Absolutely.
And we also said, hey, there might be a little bit of time if he's able to turn it around. Our opinions could change. Well, lo and behold, Gavin Lux is starting to hit quite a bit and our opinions are starting to change. And I think that is the great thing about this. You can say one thing is not hypocritical for us to say the exact same thing because we have different information. And with the way that Gavin Lux has been playing, he's been performing incredibly well. I think he's right now, if he continues to hit with the way that he has right now, you have him at the second base position. And then you can find another place if you wanted to play at Tommy Edman. Or if everybody is healthy, as everybody is playing well, then you don't have necessarily a role for a Tommy Edman, but you could have him as insurance just in case. So if Max Muncy comes back and plays the third base spot really well, and if you have, let's say that Mookie Betts goes to right field and you have a healthy Miguel Rojas at shortstop, perhaps there isn't necessarily a role that you envisioned with a Tommy Edman, in which that case could be the best case scenario, but oftentimes the best case scenario is the one that is furthest away from you, as we've seen with this Dodgers team that has dealt with so many injuries for this team. I think he's great insurance to add to this team.
Yeah, awesome, man. This has been a lot of fun. This has been one of the funnest shows. This has been fascinating conversation. I can't thank our lobby enough. What great comments we have had tonight. This has been we've got into some awesome conversations. Everybody in the lobby has given their opinions, and there have been a lot of different opinions, but it's been in a way that's created just tremendous conversation. Cole, I'm tired of the matchup game the Dodgers play. Play the guy hitting 300 in the season. I'm convinced this type of roster creates stunts, rookies development. Hey, we have about 5 minutes, so we don't have a time to get into this entire conversation. But it's platoon, hey, there's no secret that you're probably going to hit better against the opposite-handedness of pitcher. But it's that versus inconsistent playing time. Which one actually is better for a hitter? And I think people would be surprised that most of the time the consistent playing time would outweigh the trying to match up the opposite-handedness of it, because baseball brains are just so routine-oriented. They just want the same thing to be every day. And then also probably the largest component to getting the best out of somebody is making them feel comfortable. And the only way somebody gets totally comfortable is by getting everyday at-bats. So we will not get into that conversation, Austin. I know you'd have some awesome comments on that. We'll save that for a different conversation because it deserves way more time than we can give it right now, and you'll absolutely nail that conversation. Clayton's postseason busts are well documented. Same thing as last 3 years. So if Clayton Kershaw and Dave Roberts, struggled in the postseason, Clayton Kershaw is going to be a Hall of Famer, right? And Dave Roberts has been better than most managers, even managers of teams that have had great talent like him, even in the playoffs in terms of winning percentages, getting to the World Series, and actually winning World. I think Dodgers fans don't realize how hard it is to win a World Series even when you have great talent, and how few World Series even some of the greatest managers. Now, there's been a few that have won like 5 or 6, but not very many. It's a lot harder than people think. Hey, normally with San Diego and Arizona right on the Dodgers' heels, the luxury of time to see if certain players will snap back is gone. Totally agree with that. It has to be a sense of urgency. The only way he raises the floor is if he plays center field, talking about, I think, Edman or maybe Kiermaier. Casey, Levy perspective, let the kids play. They're ready, have the upside. And then we have about 3 minutes left, and we did not get to every comment, but we got to most of them. So if we did not get to your comment, hey, come back on Sunday evening and help us out on Dodgers Dawgs as part of the Dodgers Daily Network. I'm going to read one last comment, and I'm going to read that from, let's see, Dodger Blue 82. We have not read one from Dodger Blue 82. Has Roberts made costly moves? Yes. Has it cost us games? Yes. But I think Dodgers fans should show a little bit more respect to him, whether you like him or not. The numbers say otherwise. We have been preaching that to whatever choir wanted to listen to that. So, hey, Austin, final thoughts. We've got about 2 minutes left, and then it's time for Dodger baseball, baby.
Oh, yeah, it is just about time for Dodgers baseball, which is, I think, our favorite time of the year. I think it's also important to note that since we're in the month of August, we're starting to wind down closer to the end of the season. I know with high Great Lakes, we only got 3 homestands remaining, a couple of road series. Right now, they're up 5-2 in Cedar Rapids, which I've been watching the entire time I've been doing this show. Reason wearing the Camel's hat tonight is you'll get to find out what happened to Rally Camel coming up on Thursday. But with Dodgers baseball, look, there's a lot of conversation. This team never goes through anything without having there be things to discuss about. And the game of baseball is full of a lot of different dynamics, a lot of different things go into the game of baseball. I think there is a lot of different aspects to keep in mind, both the analytical aspect, which there are certain numbers that are important to keep in mind, while also the human aspect. What is the best for this individual to be able to grow? I think this Dodgers organization right now, they have been struggling at least a little bit, especially this series during the San Diego Padres. This series, I think, is going to be important for the personal side of them, getting the confidence that they have back, getting them to a place where they feel ready to go. I think this series against the Oakland Athletics is a great opportunity. It could be squandered, in which case we have a very real race, but the opportunity is there for this Dodgers team. Right. With this Dodgers team, I'm so excited about what they're able to do. They still have a lot of guys back. I think they had a pretty solid deadline given the amount of moves that there were, or at least the star potential that was moved. It's not going to be tough. It's going to be tough. It's not going to be easy, I should say, but it's going to be a fun ride, and I couldn't be more excited for Dodgers baseball tonight. Dodgers against the Oakland Athletics coming up pretty soon.
Hey, I want to thank everybody else again that joined the show tonight. What a fascinating lobby we had with just fascinating comment after fascinating comment. Austin, you killed it as well, man. We get into these really fun conversations. And there is a lot of back and forth that goes between the two of us. And, man, those are such fun conversations. So, hey, man, you killed it again for another one of these Dodgers Dog shows. I cannot thank you enough. It's always just a blast when we get to talk some baseball with Austin Brubaker. So thank you so much, Austin. So, again, to all you fans out there that joined and made this such a fun show and a wonderful show tonight, thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time, go Dodgers, beat the A's. I'm going to say it again. The Dodgers need to not lose. I said it back Wednesday. The Dodgers need to not lose all weekend long. Good night.